Welcome to the Art of Being Happy, Buddha's Guide to Modern Living from Jethavanarama Buddhist Monastery, Sri Lanka. This intriguing talk series brings timeless Buddhist wisdom to help you navigate life's challenges through simple, practical insights. Each episode offers gentle guidance for finding peace and joy in everyday moments. Join us on this journey toward lasting happiness and inner peace. Brought to you by Sanathana, the voice eternal.
Just think about it. How many of you take your work home with you? You don't have to answer. Just give me a virtual nod. A virtual nod. How many of you have to take your work home with you? I don't necessarily mean picking up the files, packing it in your bag and bringing it home and then, taking it all out and putting it down on the dressing table and start working on it. I don't mean it literally in that way. But today you can carry your work with you just from your mobile device. And even if you didn't do that, it's all up here. When you go to bed at night, what do you think about? Kissing your children goodnight, or the meeting that you have tomorrow with your next prospective buyer, or your next client, or the work meeting that has to take place and the decisions that you have to make on behalf of your company, your workplace, before they give you that next promotion, or that juicy bonus that you get at the end of the year. But we don't have time for our children now. We only have time to bring children into this world. What we don't have time is to bring them up. You got me started now. You know how big a problem drugs is out there? It's just getting worse and worse by the day. I only know about it because I hear stories from you, from the people who visit us at the monastery. Because we don't do drugs at the monastery. But outside the four walls of the monastery, things happen apparently. And people come and tell horror stories. Drugs is just one problem taking over. It's a big problem nonetheless. It's destroying your children right from the inside. And once it becomes an addiction, there's no saving them. Rehabilitation centers of these days, they do try, but unfortunately, something about their methods is not working. 60%, 70% of all drug addicts relapse. That's a huge number. 70% relapse. Half of all the prisoners in the prisons are in there because of crimes related to drugs. If I spoke to the mother of one of those men in the prison today, young men in the prison today, before the boy was imprisoned, and I told her, "Mother, think about your child. You brought the child into this world, but do you have the time to teach him right from wrong? Share values?" She'd probably have said, "I'm too busy, Swaminathan said. I'm too busy. I feed him. What else do you want me to do? I give him shelter. What else do you want me to do? I have to earn so I can pay his mobile phone bill. I give him a good education. What else do you want me to do? I send him to a good school, the best in town. I'm teaching him so that one day he can migrate, maybe to go to another country, settle down there and become a well-sought-after professional, top of his profession. That's what I want him to do. I want him to become a doctor, an engineer, a scientist, a lawyer, a professor. That's what I want him to become. So I'm too busy. Where do I have the time to take him to the temple? How might you expect me to have the time to sit him down and talk to him about how he spent his day at school today?" I ask you parents, how often do you, when your child gets back from school, sit him or her down over a cup of tea maybe and ask her, "How did you spend your day at school today, Buddha? What happened?" How many of you have the time to do that? No one loves your child as much as you do. So when your child is at school, he's sat next to, or she's sat next to, a child who might have all sorts of problems. Drugs is just one. Do you know how pornography is sweeping across the nation? It's just everywhere. Why? You need the mobile phone. You can't survive without it today, can you? We had become so dumb that we can't exist without a smartphone. I'm not saying we got to do away with them because we cannot. It would be impractical of me to even suggest something so absurd like that, to say, well, let's just all switch off our mobile phones and just go back to the ice age. I'm not even suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is, I'm just pointing out a problem that is rife, a problem that is like cancer. It's eating you from the inside and you don't even know it until one day you just drop dead. And then it's too late. I didn't expect to talk to you about this so soon, but I don't think the world can wait. Drugs, sex, and pornography. It is destroying our youth. By our youth, ladies and gentlemen, I mean your children. Because you don't have the time to think. You don't have the time to think about your children. Because you're far too busy in your lives. And besides, the things that you have to think about today are not the things that are going to save your children. That's the other main reason. Yes, we need to give our children a good education so that they can compete with the rest of the world, right? We can't take a back step and not compete with the world out there. We need to do that. I agree with all that. But in the midst of all that, we must not forget that if we forget, or if we leave out, if we ignore instilling in our children a value set, virtues, principles, morals, integrity, we will not have a child left to become a doctor. Ask any parent whose child is today in a prison cell and ask them, did you think this was going to happen a year before it did? And they'll say no. Now I ask you, do you think it's going to happen to you? What's the answer? No way, Swami, answer. No way. I know my child. He's the apple of my eye. I know my child. Okay, for those who think you know your child, let me ask you a question. Did your parents know you? Did your parents know everything you got up to? Did your parents know all the friends you kept? All the secrets that you shared? All the places you went? And I'm talking about when you were a child, perhaps 20 years ago. Things were very different back then. Today, we are so advanced that when we want something, you don't have to wait for it. We talked about this last week. You don't have to wait for it. And everything is so readily available, all you have to do is just press a button. I'm asking you to wake up to the reality that is sweeping across our nation, and unfortunately, your children are in the way. If you don't teach them to guard themselves, to protect themselves, if you just don't find the time to have that chat with them, that's the only thing that you can do. I ask you to do that. When they get back home from school, at least once a week, ladies and gentlemen, please take some time to talk with them and ask them, what did you get up to at school today? This week, how did it go? What did your friends say? What are you talking about? You know, what's going on in school these days? Otherwise, you live to regret. So many parents come and talk to us. So many parents. And you'd think that those parents are parents who are, they struggle to make ends meet. Not necessarily. Let me give you a fact. See if this makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. By this point, in the last 6 years of my monkhood, I have met many people who've come to me as they wanted to commit suicide. Young people. When you listen to their stories, to this date, none of them have been stories where they wanted to commit suicide because they were poor. They couldn't make ends meet. They couldn't feed their families. No. Sometimes it was because of the embarrassment caused by their children because the children went straight. And if you keep on digging, you realize parents just didn't have the time to correct them when it was possible. Some because the children have done drugs. You start doing it, you can't stop it. That is how drugs are designed to work. It becomes an addiction. You can't stop it. Others, they get into relationships. And those relationships, if you don't know how to work a relationship, you shouldn't be in one. If you don't know how to operate a car, you wouldn't get in one, right? But People who have no idea how to work a relationship, they get into one soon after they turn 18. Well, that was in my time, but now, soon after they turn, 6? Ask your 6-year-old. Ask your 6-year-old, do you have an affair? She might not know what an affair is. But she'll tell you that there's someone she fancies. Trust me, she won't ask you before she starts that relationship. Please don't think I'm insulting you as parents. What I'm trying to do is to try and save your children. Because, that is everything for you, isn't it? Everything you do, everything you want to do, everything you sacrifice, you do so for your children. I'm saying it's not just enough to teach them, feed them, give them shelter, build them a good future. You need to take care of their mind. Because the mind is an animal on its own, ladies and gentlemen. When the mind wants something, it will go get it, either by hook or by crook. You know this is so because when something got into your mind, you know how you acted. You somehow went and made it happen. When you thought you wanted to be with someone, you made it happen. When you thought you wanted something, you made it happen. At least when you had the choice to make, you had the liberty to make those choices, you were educated enough about the ways of the world. But today, children don't have the time to learn about how things work, but that doesn't stop them from wanting things. See, by the time you had an affair, when you were younger, you'd been in a family, you'd listen to your father, you'd listen to your mother, you'd gotten advice from your uncle. Perhaps, you were 18, 19, 20 at least, 20 years of life experience you had. But now, 6. What do they know about relationship? What do they know about friends? Can all friends be trusted? It would be fair to call those who you trust a friend. But what happens today is you call them a friend and then you trust them. Every time your trust was broken, it was not from someone who you disliked. It was always from someone who you liked, who you thought was a friend. But they don't teach that in schools. They don't teach that in schools because that is supposed to be taught at home. But what if parents don't have the time? What if parents are far too busy earning for the family, earning for the next relocation, earning for the next house, earning to buy the next property, earning to buy the next car, earning to marry their child off one day, earning for their education? I urge the parents in here, at least those who are fortunate enough to listen to these words, do make sure that you invest a part of your life to bringing up your child. Bringing a child into this world was not the challenge. Anyone can do that. But bringing up your child with the right morals, with the right values, with the right virtues. Because otherwise one day you will come and say, Swaminathan, my child doesn't even respect me anymore. I'm sick and I'm old, and my child doesn't look after me. Then I'll tell you, I told you so. Because then it will be too late to do anything other than that. But what I'm saying is, bringing up your child and instilling values, virtues, and nobility into them is not to be done because they should one day be there to look after you. That seems almost a bit selfish. That's not what I mean. At least, that do it so that one day they can look after themselves. Let alone you, so that they can look after themselves, so that you don't have to worry about them. Think about it, right? Today, parents think by the time that their children are mature, you can marry them off and then, just retire, okay? And just, the two parents, if they're still left alive by that point, you just retire and, just live your life, the last years of your life happily. But the truth is you can't do that because you're still worried about your children. They're having fight between themselves, they're having argument, so you don't know when they might come home again. Married the daughter off, but you don't know when she's going to come home again, saying, Amma, I can't do this anymore. Please take me back. Don't nod. Just give me a virtual nod. You know who I'm talking about. Not you, right? Believe you me, I don't mean any insult by saying this. This is not a criticism. All I'm saying is, let's do the right thing. I only say these words because I care. I care enough that I don't want you to suffer, because you don't have to. You don't need to. If we do the right thing today, we don't have to regret tomorrow. People spend a fortune on a wedding. I've got nothing against that. If you can afford it, do so. Some families will be fed. Why not? The people who work there, they'll get a nice bonus at the end of the year. Why not? You work hard and feed them. That's fine. That's not what I've got anything against. But what I'm saying is, people who spend so much of their lives so that they can put up a nice party, a nice wedding, and show it off to the rest of the world. What an embarrassment would it be if 2 weeks later they have to split up, and then they come home, and then now you have to take them back. Now what are you going to say to your next door neighbor? All because you didn't have the time to teach your children how, in the face of an argument, do you control yourself? How, when someone says something you don't like, how do you face that? How do you control yourself? How do you manage yourself? How do you strengthen your mind enough so that you don't have to fall victim and pray? How do you control your vexations? How do you not be disappointed? How do you not be frustrated? Do you know the number of times people have split up because they couldn't decide whether the toilet seat had to be up or down? It's in the papers. They couldn't agree. That was enough to split the family. If we don't teach our children these things, folks, it's just a disaster waiting to happen. As monks, we have nothing better to do, right? We practice the path and we observe what's going on out there, at least from what we get to hear. Because people come and, they just unload all their life's problems in front of us. So we get to experience what life is like without the Dhamma while practicing the Dhamma. It's ironical how that works, because in reality, it is the people who are in the problems who need the Dhamma. But we have the Dhamma, but no problems. It's so funny how that works. It's always like that, isn't it? When you have the money, you don't have the brains, but when you have the brains, you don't have the money. That's always how the world works. You always have something when you don't need it, and when you need it, you don't want it. So it's really interesting to study, how society works and all the problems that people find themselves in. Because, when you have a problem, who do you run to? A mental problem. When you're really down, upset, and bothered, right? Even if you don't have the time to go to the temple once a month, right, on a Poya day to observe Sil, why not? Too busy. But when things start going south, when you find out that your mother's been diagnosed with cancer, then where do you take her? Now you remember the temple. When you find out that your child has started doing drugs, now you take him to the temple. When you find out that your daughter is in an illicit relationship, in an affair that she shouldn't be in, now you take her to the temple. Hold her by the hand. No, we are going to meet the monk. Sanathana, give her some advice. You know what I do? Do her. Leave the wrong place. The person who needs advice is already there. It's too late to give advice to the girl. Now, of course, I don't know half of you in the room, so some of these tales might relate to you. But I don't mean to offend or insult, right? I'm just talking about life. I'm just talking about what people come and share with me. So some of these tales might relate to you. Some of these stories might seem all too familiar, because you're not the only one. They're all like that. A mind is a mind is a mind. You give yourselves a name, you give yourselves a title, you give yourselves a status, but ultimately it's just a mind. And when problems come, all minds suffer the same. That is why we don't study people, we study minds. We don't study engineers and doctors and lawyers and physicians, we study minds. Our study is the science of the mind. And therefore, you are all part of that. So when things start going bad, that's when people remember the temple. Because when things are happy, what do you remember? Holiday. When things are going fine, right? When the money is flowing in, right? When people are all happy, it's a happy time, good days. Then you remember the holidays. Let's go to New York. Let's go to Manila. Let's go to Hawaii. Let's go to London. Let's travel the world. Let's go to Tokyo. See what's there that we don't have here. Even if it's a trip up to UK, Uzbekistan, but even if it's that, it's time to, have a holiday, enjoy. But when things don't go right, when you find out the next problem that has just struck you, the next meteor that has just hit you, now what happens? Now you forget all those glamorous plans and you take the child, you take the wife, you take the husband, you take the mother, you take the father, and you take them to the temple. And then you now sit down and try to work out an answer. Let me tell you this, ladies and gentlemen. I encourage you to stop thinking of the temple as a place where you have to take broken good to be repaired. That is not what the temple is. It is not a place where you take broken goods to be repaired. It's where you take a mind and fortify it, strengthen it, galvanize it so it doesn't break, it doesn't rust, it doesn't go brittle. So it's no longer fragile, it's strong, it's upright, it's sturdy, it's rigid and it's robust. That is what the Dhamma is for. I didn't ordain because I had any problem. I didn't enter monkhood because I had a broken relationship. Or I realized that, I've got a cancer. Or my father died. None of those were the reasons. Or not because we were poor. None of those were the reasons. I entered monkhood because I realized the truth. Just like when Prince Siddhartha left home, nothing was wrong with him. He had everything going for him. But later on, in this sasana, right, because of some people who entered robes for the wrong reasons, it started to earn a reputation. Today, if I said, why don't you give your son? Can I take him with me to the monastery? You might be shocked and you might say, Swami, there's nothing wrong with him. There's nothing wrong with him. Why do you suggest that I should give him up? We are a well-to-do family. He's not in a broken relationship. He's not broken-hearted. There's nothing wrong with him. So why should we go to the temple? That's, partly because of the reputation that was built around the sasana when people entered the robes for the wrong reasons. Back in the time of the Buddha, all of the Rahatan Mahanses, virtually all of them were princesses. They were kings. They were emperors. They were royals, aristocrats. Right from the Buddha, who was the heir apparent to the throne, Ananda, who was his cousin, Yashodhara, who was the princess, right? They all went into the sasana, not because they had nothing. They had everything and still realized none of it actually matters. That is what the sasana is. I share this with you, ladies and gentlemen, because, be proud of who you are as a Buddhist. And I don't mean Buddhism as a religion. I mean as someone who follows the Buddhist philosophy. If you're a Muslim by religion, so be it. Go to the mosque every Friday. Do your prayers. It's fine. But as you do that, I invite you to study the Buddhist philosophy. Because this is the science of the mind. If you're a Christian, go to the church. Don't stop doing that. Because that is your duty as a good Christian. You have to do that. and provide for the church, because that is your duty. Do so. I always tell you, come here empty-pocketed. Come here empty-handed, but leave with a full mind.
Thank you for joining us on The Art of Being Happy from Jethavanarama Buddhist Monastery. May today's wisdom bring you peace and joy in your daily life. We'd love to hear how these talks have touched your life. Share your experiences with us on +91 6361 803371. Until next time, may you find happiness in each present moment. Brought to you by Sanathana Vani, the voice eternal.